Okay, so I've been doing a lot of videos on male loneliness and I guess male virgins. And I was thinking, you know what, there's a solution to this that people don't talk about, and that's prostitution. And I know it's like a taboo question, but I'm gonna argue that it should be legalized. I'm gonna give you my 2 cents of why I think that. I'm gonna react to this video. It says John Oliver makes insane comments on prostitution, and then it says canceled. I don't know. I used to watch John Oliver from time to time. I mean, he puts out like an episode every week or something, and he is left leaning. And this video is made by someone named Matt Walsh. So I don't know if he's right wing, left wing, or what the issue is. I haven't seen this. So, but it looks like he's gonna argue either in favor or against. I want to see this, and I'll let you know my thoughts. Also, before I start, are you in favor of prostitution or anti-prostitution? And I don't know. And let me know your thoughts on it.
Well, the left-wing blogs informed me yesterday that John Oliver had returned to his HBO show to deliver another epic smackdown, this time destroying, demolishing, eviscerating anti-prostitution laws. Oliver is quite sure that there is no good reason for prostitution to be illegal. He's even more sure that it's mostly just a bunch of repressed puritanical bumpkins who still support such laws.
Yeah, like, I don't know who are the people who are anti-prostitution. Like, is it super conservative, like religious people, like Christians, or is it women that don't want men to get easily laid? I always thought that was the issue, that women didn't want guys getting laid like so easy, you know. Otherwise, they won't get I don't know, like they won't have us all like desperate for them. You know, I honestly think this would solve so many issues.
Now, he begins this segment by playing some kind of weird 1950s PSA about wet dreams. Don't ask me why. Then he proceeds to list a bunch of sex positions while the audience cackles uproariously. This is just great comedy. Watch this.
Specifically tonight, we're going to talk about sex work. And the concept is pretty simple. Let's say you have sex, any kind. Missionary, doggy, cowgirl, cowboy, the eagle, the wheelbarrow, the wild Chincoteague pony, the Jerry Seinfeld, the pick-me-up, the put-me-down, mouth-butt, butt-mouth, mouth-butt-butt, butt-butt, mouth-butt, yeah, whatever. And then that's it. You go home. It's fine, right?
So you see there why Oliver needs the crutch of a live studio audience? Because without the mindless drones laughing, that would have just been a sex-crazed, schizophrenic, randomly shouting a bunch of sexual terms into the abyss.
I mean, it was kind of funny.
With the laughing, it's still that, but at least the people in the room are enjoying it, I guess. But it sets the stage for what's to come. Oliver proceeds to lay out his case for decriminalizing prostitution everywhere in the country. He has 25 minutes to present the argument in favor of prostitution, but wastes most of it talking about alleged instances of abuse by the law enforcement officers tasked with policing the practice. So he mentions, for example, a report claiming that officers in sting operations sometimes have sex with the prostitutes before arresting them.
Oh.
Now, we can all agree that if that's happening, it's wrong and horrible and exploitative. But it has nothing to do with whether prostitution should be legal or illegal. There are plenty of cases of police officers mistreating murder suspects. That doesn't mean murder should be legal. So before we talk about how these laws are enforced, and I personally think they should be enforced by first and foremost penalizing the pimps and traffickers themselves, before we can do that, we need to figure out if the laws should exist at all. Oliver doesn't really have a lot to say about that subject, even though it's ostensibly the subject of his episode of this episode of his show. But let's listen to his case for whatever it may be worth. He starts things off by drawing what actually is a valid comparison, and one that listeners of this show have already heard many times. Listen to this.
Very basically, sex work is the exchange of sex for money or goods. And in the United States, a complicated patchwork of local, state, and federal laws makes that act illegal everywhere except for a few counties in Nevada. And if you're thinking, well, hold on, John, didn't Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie have sex for real in Don't Look Now and also get paid at least scale? Wouldn't that be illegal? The answer is one, yes, I also believe that rumour, great reference. And two, that is actually legal because of the presence of the camera, making it an art film, otherwise known as porn, and thus legally covered as part of free speech. So basically, consensual sex for money on camera is legal porn, and consensual sex for money off camera is illegal sex work.
So couldn't you just have like a red light district and just say, hey, we're just gonna make our own like little movie and like and basically just like have a loophole?
Makes sense, right? Wrong? Well, exactly. Everything about the way we regulate sex work in this country is confusing and counterproductive.
Huh, where have I heard that before? I mean, you're right, John. That is, in fact, a point that I have made many times. People on your side of the ideological divide have mocked me relentlessly for it. I guess I need to say it with a British accent for it to be credible. Pornography is prostitution on film. It fits the definition in every sense of the word. It makes no sense for prostitution to only be legal when there's a camera filming it. In fact, if you could only outlaw one form, the filmed or unfilmed variety, it would make more sense to outlaw the former because it has more participants.
No, don't tell me this guy's anti-porn.
Either way, there's no denying the contradiction in the way that our laws treat prostitution as opposed to how they treat pornography. My answer to that contradiction is to make all of it illegal. His answer is to make it all legal.
No, this guy wants to make pornography illegal and prostitution illegal. Things like that's like a step in the wrong direction.
And let's find out.
It's again like I'm gonna make the argument for prostitution. It's like two consenting adults. I don't see the problem with two consenting adults agreeing to have sex with each other, and if they want to exchange goods, that's on them.
But a human history's worth of laws hasn't changed the fact that one, sex work has always been part of society, appealing to every interest and every kind of clientele, and two, sex workers are not a monolith. People from a variety of backgrounds do it for a variety of reasons, and the fact is, our current system of criminalising the trade and driving everyone underground is actually only making life harder for the most vulnerable involved. And given that sex workers are, and this is true, people with thoughts about their own situation, we thought tonight we'd actually listen to.
So here John offers two incredible insights. One, he points out that prostitution has always been around. And two, he observes that some of the people doing this...
it is, I think they say it's the oldest profession. It's been around for like a long, long time. And I don't want to just say just because it's been around it should be legalized. But again, it's not that big of a deal in my mind. But maybe this guy is going to change it.
Illegal thing would prefer if it were not illegal. Now, both of these points may seem rather obvious and irrelevant, but remember that he dropped an F word in there, which automatically makes his point both powerful and clever and funny. Yes, we know that there have been prostitutes for as long as there's been human civilization. That's why the old cliche about the world's oldest profession. But we've also had murder and rape and child abuse and every other bad human activity for as long as we've had humans. The fact that people have been doing something for a long time and will always do it doesn't automatically mean that there should be no laws against it. If it did, then there shouldn't be laws against anything. Because the only things we need laws against are precisely those things that human beings tend to do.
So let's talk about it. Why is it illegal in the first place? That's what I want to know.
If nobody did it, we wouldn't need to outlaw it. As for the point that anti-prostitution laws ignore the perspective of prostitutes, that wouldn't be relevant if it were true. Because again, pointing out that the people doing the illegal thing don't like that it's illegal is not really relevant, but it's also not true at all. Because some of the most vocal anti-prostitution voices in the country are people who've been rescued from that life. Prostitution is bad. It harms people. It harms everybody involved in one way or another. There's a reason why prostitutes, just like people in the porn industry, have astronomically high rates of substance abuse, suicide. Any law that could potentially...
Hey man, you can say that about the military. The military has a higher rate of self-harm and a bunch of other stuff. Should we get rid of the military? I don't like his arguments.
Prevent people from getting involved in this activity or deter them from it, or at least any law that fails to condone it, is good for the prostitutes or potential prostitutes themselves, even if they don't always have the self-awareness and foresight to see it that way.
And also, of course, you're gonna have former prostitutes against it because if they were treated wrong, you know. But if it was legalized, it'll be like I would argue a different argument, and maybe you should ask prostitutes in areas that it is legalized. What is their take on it? Because it's like it's not the same when underground prostitutes who are freaking, I don't know, like dodging the police and having a pimp versus someone who have their own business out in the open, you know?
You know, it's pretty common for people who are stuck in a self-destructive cycle to defend their self-destructive activity and to get very angry at anybody who tries to stop them from doing the self-destructive thing. But that doesn't really mean anything in terms of what the law should be. Now, we'll return to that point in just a moment, but first we'll continue listening to Oliver's argument, such as it is. So far, he hasn't really presented any reason to decriminalize it. Perhaps he finally gets to that point here.
This story is going to be about the fact that sex work is inarguably labour. It is a job, and people do it for the same reason that people do any job, as this advocate explains.
Sex work is inherently work. It's how people feed their families, it's how people put...
I don't want to say a joke. A job's a job. Low job, hand job, rim job.
put clothes on their backs. It's you know how people survive. I mean, I've been a sex worker. I've been a lawyer. I
would not have seen him as a sex worker. A sex worker and a lawyer? Damn.
serve sandwiches at Subway. I folded clothes at Abercrombie. All those are work.
Right, it's all work.
Okay. What's your point? Yes, those are all things you did for money. You folded clothes at Abercrombie. You were a prostitute. You were a lawyer, which some would argue is more of a lateral move.
And this dude's over here talking shit, but he's not really bringing up a good argument of why it should stay illegal.
All of that is work if by work you simply mean a task performed for financial compensation. But what does that prove? Are you saying that anything done for money is automatically good or should automatically be legal? That's quite an interesting take from the same people who also tend to be critics of capitalism. What about child pornographers? What about hired assassins? What about Bernie Madoff running a Ponzi scheme?
It's just the thing with sex, it's not like everybody, well, not everybody, it's not that big of a deal, you know, it's just sex, you know. So, to make it illegal, if the only problem is that the money is being exchanged, like you can still have sex, but if you, oh man, heaven forbid, if you were to give somebody cash afterwards, you know, or you know, it's like you could take somebody out on a date and sleep with them, and that's okay. But if you just skip the meal and slept with them, and then just gave them, hey man, here's some money for some, for some dinner, you know, but I don't have to be with you, you know. Same thing.
All of that is work done for money. If you don't think that all of it should be legal, then you're saying that there are certain types of jobs, certain types of work that nobody should be legally allowed to do in a civilized society, even if they use it to feed their families. The question is whether prostitution ought to be in that category or not, and that is a question you still have not really answered, and never do, but we'll keep listening.
To those who are still uncomfortable here, out of a concern that there are people who feel economically forced into sex work, I totally agree with you. That is a huge problem, but the fact is...
Professor Terry
Commercial.
is the equivalent of a rock star in mathematics.
Regarded as the
I almost wanted
laws are not addressed.
I almost wanted to watch that commercial.
See that. If you want to do that, that's a much bigger conversation to have, because fundamentally, the only way to make sure that people have a choice in the way they earn money is to make housing affordable, healthcare accessible, and to not burden marginalised people with criminal records that lead to a cycle of joblessness, homelessness, and desperation. But until such time, as we have that conversation, and it does not seem like something enough people are itching to have right now, we need to stop pursuing policies that harass, endanger, and occasionally refrigerate sex workers, and instead start listening to what they actually want. Because unfortunately, if we don't do that, we're just going to carry on looking like a bunch of clowns.
Well,
And I also want to say, he's talking a lot about the sex workers, but what about the sex customers? That's what that's my concern. As in, as a potential customer.
speak for yourself, John. Now, he once again returns to the point that people who are currently prostitutes do not want prostitution to be a crime. Again, I must remind you.
I was gonna say it's a potential customer. Who am I kidding? You know, I've been a customer.
Most of the people currently engaged in all types of illegal activity probably would prefer if the activity was not illegal. It doesn't really help enlighten the issue at all.
Be honest. If it was legal, would you be a customer?
Nor does it do anything to negate the real reason why prostitution is illegal almost everywhere and should remain so. And that is this. Prostitution is human trafficking by definition. It is the human body sold as a good, an object.
But you can say that about fighting, boxing, UFC. You know, you're fucking abusing your body. This could be done like sports and freaking almost anything that's labor. This is a bad argument. Shit, and those in a lot of other places is the damage to your body is much worse than sex could ever do to you.
That's also what distinguishes prostitution from
And you get paid a shit ton more.
legitimate forms of work. With legitimate labor, you are providing a good or service in exchange for money. In prostitution, you are the good. You are the service. This is also
Yeah, so one of this dude's anti-sports or anti-boxing.
how you differentiate, ZipRecruiter from a slave auction. You're not buying the slave's labor, really. You're buying him. The slave himself is the commodity, and
I mean, what about massages?
so is the prostitute. The prostitute gives herself up to be used and discarded. It is inherently dehumanizing, degrading, violent.
I mostly want to say, what about even acting, or because you are your body, well, maybe your performance, maybe.
Despair-inducing. Oliver mentions how poor and vulnerable people tend to be the ones on street corners offering to perform oral sex on strangers, which is true, but he never stops to ask himself why. Putting the law aside, why is it almost always poor and desperate people who end up going down this dark road? There are exceptions, of course, and the internet version of prostitution provides many of those exceptions, but the vast majority of the hookers on street corners are poor, desperate, drug-addicted girls. That's not going to...
It's probably because that's the only option they got. Because it's like they know that someone's gonna pay. Let's be honest. It's always a guy that they'll pay anybody,
And change by making it legal. It's not like if you legalize it, suddenly a bunch of middle-class, financially stable women are going to flock to the corner hoping to get their turn humping a random dude in a car parked by a dumpster.
Hey, there are high-end escorts, I never had no high-end escorts, but that is a thing.
This is something that only people in dire straits do because it is debasing, humiliating, dirty, and shameful.
Actually, I heard that's the thing with Instagram models, that they're basically high-end escorts that it's kind of like not talked about, but that's what they take these girls on trips and stuff, but they end up sleeping with them, so it's not directly paying them cash for sex, but if a dude flies you to Saudi Arabia and wines and dines you and everything, and then you sleep with him, he basically paid you for sex.
And dangerous. That's not an argument for making it legal. And if you think it is, I have to question not only your common sense, but your basic moral judgment as well. Now, the prostitute apologists will say that the prostitutes are acting consensually. But we know that's not true in a great number of cases. Many of these girls are physically forced and coerced into it. And again, you're not going to alleviate those cases by making the practice illegal. Pornography is legal, and that certainly hasn't done anything to put a dent in the child porn business. The effect has gone entirely the other way. As for prostitutes, Many did not choose that life. That's reason.
I don't know. So this guy's saying. So this guy's saying if we legalize it, the issue is still gonna be here, and if we don't legalize it, the issue is still gonna be here. So that's kind of a bad argument. That there's gonna be people abused. They're gonna be abused no matter what, whether we legalize it or not. That's a bad take.
Enough to keep it illegal. But even the ones who appear to have chosen it didn't really choose it. People who think they have choices.
Because right now it's illegal. So and people are getting abused. So why should that matter?
Don't become prostitutes. You'd think this would be obvious to the left, especially as they're the ones who say that a boss having sex with his subordinate is automatically a rapist because the power dynamics make consent impossible, right? That was the Me Too logic. Now, if they can apply that principle to the workplace, where it should not actually be applied most of the time, how can they exempt prostitution?
See, I'm gonna stop right here. I'm not arguing that legalizing prostitution is gonna stop sex workers from being abused or any of that stuff. I'm just arguing that I don't see an issue with paying somebody who's willing, and that if you did legalize it, that there will be people who would have establishments, kind of like Amsterdam, where it's you're your own boss. You get to choose the customer. If you don't, somebody's stinky or whatnot, you tell them no, or you just like, hey, no, man, you smell. I'm gonna have to bump. We can negotiate prices based upon how you look or smell or whatnot. You're the boss. You negotiate. Or you could just flat out tell them no, man. Like as a business owner, you'll get another customer, or if you don't care, whatever. I don't know. I always thought it's an outdated law that it was my thinking was that it became illegal because of the Christian movement, and I'm pretty sure in the future it's gonna be legalized. Somewhere down the line, it's slowly it'll become legalized. Like I said, people are realizing that sex isn't anything special, man. Especially nowadays, everybody's sleeping with everybody. I'll take that back. There's actually a lot of large groups of virgins, so never mind. But it's what I mean. It's people sleeping around all over the place, like it ain't nothing, man. We swap partners like we're switching jobs, There's like no loyalty. You see marriage rates go down, and like divorce rates go up. Obviously, like it's not a big deal anymore, and who knows? All right, I'm probably gonna look for another video who has a better argument in favor of prostitution. That's it for this one.